Gervonta Davis once again put on another convincing performance, securing a big KO victory over Frank Martin in the 8th round. Going into this fight, I saw many saying this would be Tank's toughest challenge yet, and although Frank Martin had great potential, if we're being honest here, he was outclassed, outgunned, and out his depth in my opinion. Martin had an okay start, landing some decent combinations on Gervonta, but nothing substantial enough to stop Tank from walking him down throughout the fight. Tank's strategy was clear from the beginning: apply pressure, make Martin throw, and counter him with powerful shots when the opportunities arised. As the fight progressed, Tank's relentless aggression and calculated counters simply wore down Martin, and by round 7, both fighters did have an exchange of big left hands, but it was Tank who remained unfazed, showcasing his confidence and durability, while Martin's inability to defend effectively in the corners ultimately led to his downfall. The final sequence was a testament to Tank's power and precision: a right hook followed by a left uppercut and a follow-up left to finish the job. With another win under his belt though, the big question now is, what next for Tank Davis? At the age of 29 and turning 30 later this year, the time for the excuses is done. No more fringe contenders. We need to see him face the other top contenders and champions now, whether that be 135 or 140 going forward. I put out a poll asking you guys who you would like to see him fight next in terms of the more popular options, and most of you seem to want the Loma fight. But now I'll go through each opponent, how it could go down, and if it will even be a good fight. First up, we have Vasyl Lomachenko, and this has probably been a fight fans have wanted for a very long time. And if we're being honest, Tank was kept far away from Lomachenko, thanks to Floyd Mayweather's influence on his career strategy at the time, as Floyd helped him avoid risk against top tier opponents, even when they were both fighting in the same weight division. And personally, it's just a shame it didn't happen 3 or 4 years ago. However, there was always that issue with different promoters and networks not being able to work together back then. However, I do feel we are starting to see a change in that, considering we've seen the Saudis come in and really giving the promoters no choice but to work with each other. The Ukrainian was still able to make it very competitive. But going back to that fight itself, Loma, despite his size disadvantage, he has proved himself by taking on the bigger challenges, including against Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney. And while he came up short against Teofimo, and in my opinion should have got the victory against Devin Haney, both Lopez and Haney, naturally bigger fighters than Lomachenko, the Ukrainian was still able to make it very competitive. Now in terms of the matchup with Tank, I think stylistically this could be a fascinating fight. Tank has shown some vulnerability in the past against aggressive fighters willing to come forward. The likes of Santa Cruz and Pitbull Cruz had great moments in their fights with him, while even Rolly and Ryan Garcia had success, despite walking right into Tank's hands. But for me, Loma's different. His footwork, angles, pressure style, and high ring IQ would test Tank's abilities. Stylistically, this fight would challenge every aspect of Tank's boxing ability in my opinion. However, it's also worth noting that this probably still should have happened 4 or 5 years ago. And although Loma looked great in his last fight against George Kambosos Jr., he is nearing the end of his career, while Tank is probably arguably in his physical prime. Nevertheless, I could see Lomachenko getting a decision victory, especially with his high output, and if he was able to avoid Tank's power. Nevertheless, I could also see Lomachenko walking into one of Tank's punches, as Tank has proven time and time again, it only takes one punch with him. Now let's move on to Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson, obviously undefeated and known for his impeccable defense and technical prowess, presents another unique challenge and possibly the hardest style matchup for Tank. And maybe that fight with Martin was good preparation in facing Shakur, as both do have slick southpaw styles, but with Shakur obviously operating at a much higher and elite level. And I think a fight between Tank and Shakur might not be the most exciting clash of styles for the fans, as both fighters do have a relatively low output. However, if anyone can push the pace and land significant shots, it's Gervonta Davis. And the key question is whether Tank can land those power shots on such a slick operator like Shakur. Well, Shakur is also a fantastic counterpuncher as well. And much like Gervonta, has also proven the southpaw versus southpaw matchup is not a problem for him. And personally, I think for Gervonta's legacy, this is a fight he probably should take sooner rather than later in my opinion. And I do think it would be Tank Davis actually pushing the pace in this fight, with Shakur Stevenson looking to pick his shots and counter Davis coming in. And although it might not be the most exciting fight, I think for Gervonta Davis' legacy and even Shakur's, this is a fight that needs to happen sooner rather than later. I've done a video on how Shakur could handle all the top guys at 135 if you want to check that video out after this. And next up, we also have Devin Haney, the current 140-pound champion and former undisputed lightweight champion. And given the beef and back and forth between the two, along with the leaked sparring footage, this fight has great potential for an exciting build-up in my opinion. And although Devin Haney did lose to Ryan Garcia, who Gervonta obviously beat, the circumstances around that fight were controversial, especially with Ryan failing a drugs test and coming in overweight, and it's likely that will be a no contest anyway. I also highly doubt Haney will return to 135, so this fight would probably have to take place at 140, which of course would benefit Haney, who is said to hydrate to about 160 to 170 pounds come fight night. And going off Tank's career thus far, I can't see Tank agreeing to the fight unless there's some clause or something in there. However, personally, Haney's still a good fighter. He's got good speed, slick boxing, defensive skills, and a decent ring IQ, but it's the lack of power that has been a concern. And going off that sparring footage, which was many years ago, it was a fiery encounter, and I imagine the fight itself would be like that as well. However, I do just feel Tank's power would eventually break through Haney's defense at some point. Nevertheless, I still think this would be an intriguing fight for fans to see, and one that should definitely be considered by Gervonta Davis' team. And of course, we can't forget about the outsiders, and that includes the likes of Ryan Garcia, Teofimo Lopez, Pitbull Cruz, William Zepeda for example. And I guess another good option for Tank would maybe be the rematch of Ryan Garcia, which could obviously reignite that rivalry, and especially with Ryan becoming a viral sensation this year. For the right or wrong reasons, however way you look at it, the second fight would be absolutely huge, no doubt. However, we do need to look at the moral side of this sport, and there are a few reasons why this fight shouldn't go ahead. Well, one, Ryan was proven to be a drug cheat. Secondly, that first fight was not entertaining at all. Sure, there were some knockdowns, but it ended up being a total anticlimax in terms of the style matchup. And thirdly, well, I just think the same outcome would likely happen. Ryan opening himself up, with Tank eventually catching Ryan when he opens himself up, trying to land that left hook. While we also have Teofimo Lopez, who is also shown to have explosive power and confidence in his own ability, and that itself is also an intriguing option. However, Tank would probably have to move up to 140 pounds for that fight as well. Nevertheless, I do think it's a good style matchup, and both would sell the fight in my opinion. While there's also the possibility of a rematch with Pitbull Cruz, now a champion at 140 pounds, where Gervonta got an injury during the fight and had to face him on late notice due to a pullout from Rolly. And with Cruz built up more experience, maybe that could be an interesting rematch to take. While there's also the rising lightweight contender William Zepeda, who has been walking through opponents. And with his come forward style and Tank's counterpunching, I really do think that could be an exciting matchup too. But yeah guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Who would you like to see Tank Davis fight next? Personally, I just want to see Tank in there with the best champions going forward. No more fringe contenders. As a fan of the sweet science, I want the best fighting the best. And there's no more excuses Tank can have. This has been Jamie from Boxing Life. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed, why not check out one of these videos if you want more.